Welcome to The Choice to Grow. I'm Scott Schwenk. Through these dialogues, we'll explore fresh perspectives and discover practical tools for navigating a thriving life that adds value wherever we are. I'll introduce you to innovators and creators from across our world who embody what it means to cultivate growing as a way of life. Let's prepare together. Take a deep breath in. Hold the breath briefly as you soften your shoulders and soften the soles of your feet and palms of your hands. Then exhale like you're releasing tension and setting down a heavy burden from every cell. Now let's dive in. Welcome everybody to The Choice to Grow. I've got another special guest for you today. I know I say that a lot, but the truth is, with the exception of one person, I've known everybody who's been on the show so far, and they're all special to me in their own way. So this guest is none of an exception to that. Geoff Fitch is a teacher, a coach, a facilitator of development in individuals and collectives. He is a founder of Pacific Integral and a developer of the Generating Transformative Change program. That's their key program at Pacific Integral, which has been delivered on 3 continents and is in its 34th cohort. He has been exploring, researching, and developing diverse approaches to cultivating higher human potentials for over 30 years, including meditation, spirituality, somatic and transpersonal psychology, transformative change, emergence, and collective intelligence. Geoff holds degrees in transpersonal psychology and computer science and has additional study in jazz music, philosophy, and business. I have had the good fortune to spend time with Geoff in person in Colorado. We both attended a couple of integral theory conferences and then some curated gatherings after that were quite unique and special, and where we really got to dive in with people who are really at the leading edges of consciousness and people who are choosing to grow as a way of life. Some of the things I appreciate about Geoff is my experience, and maybe cover your ears, Geoff, is Geoff has a very wide state of consciousness, but it's hidden in plain sight. And what emerges is this simplicity, this deep listening, this presence with whatever I've seen arising around him, and his unshakable signature humor and laugh. So without further ado, Geoff, I'm so happy to be here together, dialoguing and seeing what wants to emerge around the choice to grow.
Yeah, thanks so much, Scott. Yeah, thanks for mentioning laughing. It's like when I'm engaged with people, I'm often laughing, but when I'm talking about my work, I often sound so serious. So I appreciate you putting that in there.
Well, that's an interesting maybe starting point is, I bet there's a lot of listeners. I'm definitely somebody who's had this experience where, for sure, when I'm in the seat of the teacher and there's a transmission of awareness happening, even though I do bring, or it emerges with a lot of humor often, there's a different tone. There's like it's got this impersonal quality to it that it can seem serious in its focused nature. And then there's like the silly Scott out and about, just the rest of the day. And as I look at that with you, I'm like, okay, like this thing that so many of us have grappled with and continue to grapple with about relating to physical, 3-dimensional reality, friends, colleagues, business, government, social safety net, finance, all these things. And then this unchanging, dynamic field of aliveness that has no end and no beginning from what I can tell. And sometimes feeling like a ping pong ball and almost feeling, or actually feeling kind of bruised and beaten up sometimes by it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think maybe starting at a more superficial level, my dad had a good sense of humor. I picked up, I think, a lot of my humor from my dad. And my parents were both Canadian. And so this kind of British cultural heritage with its sarcastic humor and my dad's humor could be quite cutting too, so it
Oh
was
yeah,
both.
eh?
It had both sides of that coin, so I he was often loved for it because it could also be very self-effacing, which was a lovely quality. And so that humor has always been part of me, and also part of my learning, because I can be funny and um, also be hurtful, like, you know, uh, inadvertently with it. And even, now it's just like I'm constantly apologizing for the humor, that comes out in odd ways. Well, maybe not constantly, um, but I think at a deeper level, you're kind of pointing to, like, kind of that paradox of emptiness and fullness. You could say, like, the humor, in a sense, is an expression of emptiness. It's an expression of freedom. When something's when we're describing something and we're kind of laughing at what we're describing, there's a kind of distance from it that we're expressing. We're not totally immersed in it, and yet the paradox is that, so there is that wide open freedom that you're pointing to, that sort of boundless openness, that we're in that aspect of our existence. We're free from all of this. And yet at the same time, that very same openness expresses itself um, as form. And there's even a further paradox in there. It expresses itself as uh, already perfect and sacred and whole in its form, but also broken, suffering, disconnected in the very same form. And so, yeah, I mean, ultimately, the paradox is that's all the same thing, and you can get ping ponged around in it, but it's something that, the mind can't make sense of, the ordinary mind. But it is what is, and from a particular view.
I was recommended an incredible book that I have a feeling you already own and have sat with, by the third Kamtrul Rinpoche. I believe it was like he composed it, I don't know, a couple hundred years ago or something like this, The Royal Seal of Mahamudra. And I've really just been poking around in book one of it. And then the first day I opened it, when it arrived, this quote jumped out such that I had to write it down. And I've just been being with that quote predominantly as my entry into the book, which he says, the antidote for attachment is emptiness. The remedy for emptiness is compassion.
Mm.
How might
Yeah.
you unpack that?
Yeah. Well, like, thanks for pointing that out, because, what I was speaking was drawing on that amazing tradition. And, but I just want to say, first of all, I love that you're, like, reading that book and you're mainly just sitting with that quote, because that's often the way I'll read a book too. I'll open it up and I'll get to the first sentence, and and that'll do me for 3 years or
Yeah,
something.
I can't keep
You
reading
know,
it. Like it would
Like-
almost feel like a headache if I tried to keep reading more content. It's like, no, this is it. I'm in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Could you say the quote again?
Yeah. The antidote for attachment is emptiness. The remedy for emptiness is compassion.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, well, it's an interesting way to put it, because it's that quote is like addressing the extremes that we can get into. We can get into the extreme of emptiness or fullness. And so when we're immersed in everything and troubled, or you know disturbed positively or negatively by our experience, wrapped up in it, like as if all of this is, solid and real, and we're at the effect of it moment to moment. um, and of course, that's an ordinary human experience. It's just like we're built to immerse ourselves in our view of the world, and it's not bad. But if we're merely immersed, then, that the word attachment, is kind of like being grabbed by all of that, as Dan Brown used to say, and particularly grabbed by ourselves, by Geoff and Scott, like, all of those things. And so the emptiness is the antidote, is the seeing through that to the deeper ground. It's a seeing that what we're experiencing is our own awareness, and that awareness has an open quality to it. It's boundless, timeless. There's no inside or outside. There's nothing to do to manifest it. There's no center to it, no edge, no form to it. It's just this boundless field of openness. And when you see what arises as an expression of that, you see the qualities, the emptiness qualities of it, at least what arises a little bit more dreamlike, more insubstantial. And this is an ordinary human experience. We all of the time, like, have a thought that we think this is the way it is, and then we realize that's not the way it is. It's like, I left my car keys on the dining room table. I can see them in my mind right where I put them, and they're not there. It's like that. That's just like a simple, ordinary human example.
Yeah, I lost my AirPods out of my gym bag somehow mysteriously, and I'm not a person who loses things. And interestingly enough,
they're right there, Scott.
Well, these are the new ones. These are the replacement ones. And they're very different, and they don't seem to like to stay in my ears. But I was literally rummaging through my bag when I was looking for them at the gym in the locker room next to another fellow who was literally doing the same exact thing. His had disappeared from his bag.
Yeah, it's just the point there is that, like, we imagine a world into existence and experience it as real, even if it's something as simple as I put my keys there. And then we realize, oh, no, they're in my pocket or something like that. But then we realize, then we make that real, that they're actually in my pocket. And the practice of realizing emptiness is seeing all of that, everything, as through its dreamlike quality. And that's a path of freedom. It's a path of freedom from conditions. Conditions arise, but we're not grabbed by them. And so that, emptiness is the antidote to attachment in that way. The disturbance of being caught by the reification of things that aren't really solid. So another way to put this is that we're seeking our own existence in things that aren't reliable.
So that's like me dating somebody and hoping to fill in the chinks in my own armor of my sense of self through what he does or does not do, or says, does not say. And then if that goes away, I'm messed up.
Yeah. Or even seeking, and ultimately it's seeking ground in a sense of I that isn't your ultimate self. Like, that person might fill in those chinks that you're seeking. But if you look closely, the sense of self there isn't even as solid. It's changing day to day. It's a process that is ultimately empty too. And from this point of view, I'm speaking from the point of view of the Mahamudra practice that you referenced, is like the ultimate ground of awareness itself is just our direct experience, prior to making a story about it. And that's what's been there your whole life, is that open field of experience. who you take yourself to be is something that's like changed throughout all of that. But the real, experience that you're having is that open ground of the direct experience. This right here. So that's half of the quote that you gave. The other half is compassion, right? So as we open into that awareness, it's easy to go too far into emptiness. Well, I won't say it's easy, but one can go, you could say, too far into emptiness, which is to kind of go halfway into emptiness in another perspective, and to think that you're detached from the world, that you're free of it, that you're not part of it, or you're not, and it can kind of go into something like nihilism. But either that's a kind of misunderstanding of emptiness or an impartial emptiness, because actually any separation from the world is also insubstantial. So when you fully realize this view, you're not separate from anything. So you're free of it, but you're feeling everything. You're experiencing everything. You're intimate with everything. And that openness, you realize, other people don't experience that same freedom, that same openness. And it draws you into life and into care and into connection with others. And it's a further realization that wants to happen, not just in yourself, not in this so-called separate self, but in everyone through you.
I notice where I find myself, or seem to find myself, in my own development lately, that this boundless, timeless awareness and this capacity to see through things seems to be shining more and more. And yet there's all these remaining, whatever, imprints, memories, understandings of what I should be doing to pay the bills, to return phone calls, to handle projects and all this. And there's this in-between space. I was explaining to Vanita, who I work with, who's been on a different episode, I feel like I have a foot in two different personas or two different senses of self. And at the moment, for the last few weeks even, it's felt like being seasick in a certain regard.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm. Seasick.
Seasick.
Like, can you just say a word about those two senses
of
self? Just to,
so one is this sense that has been training since childhood, had a mother who was a corporate trainer and executive coach, and has read so much and had so many long mentorships, and has learned how to do things with more effectiveness and specificity and like that, and is very kind of created something like that. I can even notice my body kind of feeling like the molecules get a little closer together when I talk about it.
Yeah.
And then there's this emergent experience that everything is sort of like a dream, like objects, ideas, projects, and people, and doesn't ultimately matter. All the while experiencing this intense empathy for the world situation, concern for my own financial survival. I've got a payroll. I don't have a lot of additional things coming in. The podcast has its own expense and things like that. So I'll notice that, like, checking in with a bit of so-called news about what's happening in some world situation that's percolating in a big way can stimulate the feeling of grab. And so I can tell that it's the feeling of grab that has me feeling like a ping pong ball between senses of self. Nobody's doing it to me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really clear. Yeah, thank you. Well, you could try, like, taking your mortgage payment and just writing on the bill, this is just an empty dream I'm having, and mailing it in. See how that works for
Yeah,
you.
that'd go over like
Uh,
a lead balloon. Good for you, Mr. Schwenk. We're foreclosing in a matter of days.
no, it's yeah. I mean, there's a couple of things that you're pointing to. One is like I'll come back to the grab, but the but like we are talking about an aspect of ourselves, which you could say is our deeper nature, our true self, although even calling it a self is a kind of construct. Our deepest nature, our awakened awareness at the heart of who we are, is one thing that you're pointing to. And yet we also incarnate, we also embody as a relative self. You're still Scott, and that's what it says on the screen here, Scott.
Yeah.
It doesn't say timeless, boundless, awakened awareness. It says Scott.
Yeah, that guy.
And that's useful, right? Because, like we started this, call a half an hour ago, and that's, we have to have time and space and each other and all of that. So it's you show up as this, right? This, and there's a whole, we've been kind of talking about the path of awakening, but there's a whole territory of growth for this, which is really important, which includes, our own, you could say shadow work or integration or wholeness. It includes our self-development, our ego development, the way the relative self gains a kind of more and more kind of complex and holistic view of reality, includes our embodiment, and our sense of our own integrity and truth. It includes our ethical conduct in the world, our self-expression, our sense of purpose. It includes our ability to have relationships and be in intimacy and have to collaborate. It includes our ability to create culture together and to engage in collective life together. So all of that stuff, it's all a dream, but it's a sophisticated dream that we're participating in, and we all of that is part of the growth dimension too. And so I just want to say all of that to honor that. And in our work, I just kind of went through kind of 7 different dimensions of, that aspect of growth, which is something that we pay attention to. And so, yeah, we still like have to get up in the morning and have a challenging conversation with our partner or a colleague. We have to pay attention to handling, the concrete things that life gives us to handle. We have a world that's in many ways in crisis that we care about. There's a lot in this relative life to care about and to make sense of. So, yeah. And when you mentioned grab, that is pointing back to the emptiness, right? Which is like that is a practice in itself to deepen, to integrate both that view that this is an open, boundless field of free awareness, unimplicated in what's happening from
Yeah.
an aspect of it. And then there's the work to stabilize that in all situations and times and difficult times when we're engaged in tasks with each other, thinking, doing, dealing with something that's disturbing. And that's the work to fully integrate that into life, to where, in the Tibetan practice, it's ultimately getting you ready to go through the dying process and staying awake,
Oh, say more
which,
about that. That just really lit up.
well, it's I don't I'm not an expert in that aspect of the practice, but I know that ultimately it's seen as, an opportunity for awakening. You die and you go through a kind of bardo process where you're going through the dissolution. It's like being in a dream, being in a lucid dream, and having the dream dissolve and staying awake in that, so that when the dream dissolves, you see the formless absorption and this timeless, boundless awareness, and awaken to that during the dying process. So I'm just giving that as an example as a challenging human situation
Yes.
to not be ping ponged in and not be grabbed by. But that's
Yeah.
or dream yoga, is another example, that you're able to stay awake as you sleep and dream. But we have plenty of waking experiences that are challenging to practice with. That's the ordinary human thing.
What stands out at the moment is you're pointing at a context for perceiving and experiencing ordinary life moments. A context of choosing to grow is how I hear it. Oh, this could be something that I could react to and be mad about or sad about or, shut down or contract about. And yet, if I have access to some tools, some awareness, wait a minute, what if I just see this as path? Like this is part of my path, not just my path to get through the day, but my path to be of benefit to more beings by transforming my relationship to experiencing, seeing, wanting,
Mm-hmm.
needing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a really good pointing out that you're giving, Scott. At kind of any level of practice, to welcome your experience um, is a really powerful starting point, because it allows us to relax a little bit, that sort of reaction to the reaction, and just allow ourselves to have whatever's going on. And then you can work with that. And you can work with it relatively. If there's something that you're struggling with, you can work with that um, through the mind, the emotions, the somatics. Maybe it's a relational issue. You need to have a conversation with someone, um, or from this kind of perspective awakening that we're talking about, you can bring that onto the path of emptiness, so that you can see, oh, I'm grabbed by this situation, like who's grabbed by it? Like, where is the self that's frustrated? And explore that until you see the emptiness of the self, see the emptiness of the sensations, the thoughts, and find, but that's a path, you still, like, it's important to do the relational work and the shadow work, because those patterns, could reanimate in life over and over again. So we want to work with them in that way too. See what's hidden.
Relationships seem to be like truth serum in that regard, like to show me where there's room to grow.
Yeah. In our work, um, this has been one of the deep learnings for me and for those of us that have been involved in it, is the because we most of the work that we do is taken in the format of sort of smaller, intimate communities, and in the GTC program, in cohorts of people who work intimately together for over the course of most of a year, and continue to work together beyond that. And um, in many ways, you could say that relationship is the area where kind of most of the knots are. You could say, most of our own shadows were, it's sort of obvious that that we're always in relationship, we're always in the context, and most of our shadows have to do with something involving other people. And that's always the context we're in. But that field of relationship is really where a lot of our work is. But also it's where our liberation is. It's where we awaken each other, the
Mm, we
from the
awaken each other.
from the Buddhist perspective, the Sangha is one of the things that the teacher and the Sangha you rest in, um, take refuge in. There's the passage from the Bible, wherever two or more are gathered in my name, I am there. It's part of the human history, part of our indigenous history, that we awaken each other. And so we our collective, there's a paradox in this, which is our relationships or our collective environment, our tribe, our we space, however you want to put that, can be limiting to us, but also liberating to us. And the paradox is that we're the ones that are creating that. So the thing that wants to be liberated is creating the thing that liberates us or limits us. So there's a kind of paradox in the I and the we there. And we can construct cultures, like liberating cultures, and that supports, to be supportive for each other.
Mm.
But we're looking at the world right now, and there's no one in charge. And so from another perspective, we can't stand outside of our culture and remake it, because we are our culture. And so part of the work that we do is to go deep into that paradox and explore how can the I and the we co-emerge, co-awaken, co-evolve? How can we fully engage in our own individual growth, but do that in community, and together engage in how the community can grow too, how the community can become self-aware, how it can work with its own collective shadow, and so on. And that's just been an animating question for us, and something that we work with in our programs.
It's so evocative to listen to it from your point of view. For me, one of the things I want to point out for the listeners is we're informed by this understanding and some degree of experience in each of us that there's nothing that's not connected to everything else. So we are intimate with everything in existence, even though it may not yet seem like it to you as a listener. It may not yet be your experience, your worldview, except maybe you had a psychedelic journey one time and you realized you were one with the trees, but didn't stick. It just became a memory to talk about over, the turmeric latte or something like that, like matcha. So this underlying assumption that for many of us is like, I remember, I forget, I remember, forget, that I'm one with the 10,000 things, as the Taoists would say.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the community functions like, okay, if there's all these different varieties of plants, animals, insects, beings, people, and thoughts and awareness, that can be reflected in a community. Whereas if I'm just doing my kind of practices in a cave by myself for, 10, 15 years, how do I know how embodied my awakenings or realizations are if it hasn't been tested by being involved in culture, being involved with other people?
Yeah. I want to share a quote from Karen Barad that has always been meaningful to me. It says, "We are not outside observers of the world. Neither are we simply located in a particular place in the world. Rather, we are part of the world and its ongoing interactivity. Knowing as a matter of the part of the world, making itself intelligible to another part." And what she coined this term intra-activity. It's not interactivity, but it's intra-activity. And it kind of points to, like, interactivity is like we're two separate things and we come together and we interact. And interactivity is that we actually, through our interactions, we're creating each other. So it's a kind of deeper participatory perspective. And so I love that you mentioned this sort of going off into the cave and practicing, right? Because it's like, who goes off into a cave? I mean, sometimes people do that a little bit, but it's a kind of image or metaphor for something that we imagine. But the practice, you go into a cave. The practice of going into a cave is a cultural construction. The practices that you're doing in the cave come from centuries of history. The cave itself is part of the world. It's part of your community. You go into that cave, you're in a community of beings, of form. All of a sudden you're shaped by your community. Wow. We're never apart from the world, from this alive universe that we're embedded in it. We are it. We are that.
That just brought me to my knees and my eyes are tearing up. I was thinking of a particular person who is alive. To some, she's known, Jetsun Matalmo, who's a Buddhist nun and an incredibly awake, powerful teacher, very humble, who went to a cave for something like 13 years of practice, refusing to come down until she felt like an accomplishment had been embodied beyond return. And as you're talking about, I'm like, wow, how did I not see that? And I'm not self-recriminating. Like, how did I not see that everything is a relationship, whether it's with humans or animals, or where am I going to get some kindling for the fire tonight so I don't freeze? Like, there's all these relationships, and didn't recognize that I was projecting a lack of consciousness on things that don't look human, like the rock wall, or the fire itself, or the moon, or the blades of grass. And it's like, as I start to open my heart, open my breath and being to the possibility of sensing the aliveness in all of life, then I sense that there's nowhere that there's not Sangam, the gathering of.
Exactly. Yeah, all of manifest reality is ultimately the teacher and the Sangha. You're not alone. Now we can with as part of our movement in life, engagement and detachment is it's like breath. There are times that doesn't mean like always practice in the busiest part of town, or that you're always engaged. There is that you don't take a vacation because there's no difference. There is a kind of there's a kind of relative, like like retreat is helpful. We do a lot of retreats, and get away, and but when we're in retreat, we're in culture.
Even so-called solo retreat. I mean, I've done several solo retreats, and like, wow, you're right.
Yeah. You take culture. Even in your own mind, you take the entire world with you into retreat, And
all those sub-personalities, that's a culture.
Yeah, exactly.
With a point of view, I want ice cream. No, we're on retreat.
Exactly. So it's important. Yeah, I mean, you just pointed to like the inner like system of parts of our mind and self, and this is the relational domain, and it's really important. It's important to cultivate qualities of intimacy and relationship with that culture, with those parts in yourself, with the birds outside of your cave, and also that we learn to cultivate healthy culture together from the inside out. Because following that quote from Karen Barad, we're never anywhere but the inside of our culture, so of our world, of reality, of the universe. There's no way to pop out of it, and remake it. We got to do it with each other from the inside. That's a view. that we explore.
Mm. One of the through lines throughout culture, some culture, and development systems that I keep studying, learning about, bumping into in different ways over long periods of time are the teachings that show how to transform relative reality as well as transform consciousness, even though most people seem to, at first blush, use them to try and transform relative reality. And I'm talking
Mm-hmm.
about whether we call it the Hermetic alchemy principles, whether we call it the laws of attraction and repulsion, etc., or what some people commonly refer to as manifestation work.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually giving a course that I'm only a month into the 3 months of, and I'm really grappling with how I'm unpacking this for people so that I don't set up a culture of people just trying to get stuff
Yeah.
and keep covering up awareness, but
Mm-hmm.
also not to avoid engaging with culture, engaging with relative reality. What's your
Mm-hmm.
take on these principles of like what I think I get more of? If I don't like what I'm seeing, I need to relentlessly practice the feeling of what I wish is already so. How to
Mm-hmm.
use that skillfully, if there is a skillful use of that, so that it doesn't reify all the grab and constantly having to rearrange reality with my so-called practices.
Yeah, that's a good one. No, it's like, yeah, no, you've zeroed in on something about that whole kind of realm of practice that's a kind of contradiction at the inside of it, I would say, and this is one of my teachers is philosopher Philip Gollebuck really ran this to ground at one point in his teaching and practice. But the contradiction is somehow, if I can if I can suppose I can kind of shift my own consciousness or my own mind in order to manifest something that I want. The contradiction is that in order to do that, I need to take a construct of lack, that somehow I need to do that in order to be fulfilled. There's a sort of there's a presumption of lack in, even if I'm taking a presumption of abundance. If I'm doing it for that reason, then there's a subtle contradiction in it. And Philip used to have these kind of this is he would call it four noble truths of in this case I'm going to kind of recontextualize them for this conversation, which is something like manifestation can happen. You can let manifestation is possible. You can't make manifestation happen. You can let manifestation happen. But if you let manifestation happen in order to make it happen, it won't happen.
Damn, that.
So it's sort of surfacing the contradiction in that. And those weren't his words. I was kind of re-paraphrasing it for the conversation we're having now. But it's a kind of like, if we take an inner view of it, the inner work is to really recognize the way in which you already have everything that you need. You don't need to get something more. It's taking the inner stance of the self that is fulfilled. That's the inner work.
Let's bring
But
some grit into it, though.
yeah,
Like a situation where, for example, for me, this is looking back, I go, wow, this is kind of a small situation from where I sit now. But 11 years ago, give or take, I was in a financial dire strait and I
yeah,
didn't know what to do about it. And it was at the beginning of rideshare. And I had this intuitive guidance to sign up as a Lyft driver. And it was double fisting for Uber and Lyft at a time when you could actually make money at it. And I had come across this little book called The Abundance Book by John Randolph Price, and I was working with these 10 affirmations as though they were
Yeah.
already so in his list of, practice in 10 states of love and joyful thanksgiving and like this.
Yeah.
And I did see my world turn around.
Yeah.
My relative world did turn around.
Yeah.
But what I noticed when I reflect on it is I had gotten to a place where I realized I had to surrender my identity as a teacher. I had to surrender my identity as a healer. I had to surrender my identity as somebody who needs to have certain amount of money or house or whatever in order to slip through this passageway where this could work. This practice
Yeah.
could work.
Yeah.
Right? That's my example. I'm thinking about somebody, for example, who's wrongly imprisoned, who hasn't done a thing and is being tortured, and they maybe have these principles from some other time or blessing stream in their life. They know these principles. In that kind of a dire circumstance, seemingly dire circumstance, you go, okay, I have everything that I need. How do I meet this? Do I meet this and just like go belly up? Do I meet this and somehow look to alchemically transmute the circumstance? Do I just work with my own awareness?
Can I ask you a question about your experience there?
Please.
Yeah, it sounded, what I thought I heard was that you were in that situation. You started working with the practices in that book, which, and I heard you both. Tell me if I'm wrong. I heard you both say that you were like bringing in this more kind of abundant view or view of like love, and at the same time giving up any sense of needing to like accomplish something or your own self identity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so that's a that's a, to me, a beautiful example of sort of letting things unfold while also being you know choosing to have a friendly relationship to yourself and to the world, is the way Philip might put it.
I want
Yeah.
click the underscore bold, having a friendly relationship to yourself and
Right.
the world.
Right. Your own there's a contradiction where you feel like the sense of possibility of wholeness and abundance, yet you look out at the world and see it as full of scarcity and harm.
Yeah.
So so when you come into alignment and you feel and you relax and you feel like, oh, like this is the right way, this is the true way to see the world, it's not contrived. It's like this world is unbelievably abundant. You are in this moment, like there is countless, like countless processes that are contributing to you being alive and breathing and having the opportunity to experience this consciousness in embodied form. Culture, physics, biology, you look at it through any perspective, and your life is a miracle that's been gifted to you every moment. That I say that, and I have issues to deal with in my life. Okay. Right. But if you view it through that lens, it changes everything. But what I heard in you is it also involved giving up your a kind of willfulness about that.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about. Like, and that wasn't like that was something that you just had to do in that moment.
Yeah.
So it's your the what's happening here in terms of manifestation is beyond your control, right? You're talking about what the universe is doing. So it involves both that view that you're talking about and also coming to it with an open hand.
Mm.
Like, okay, I give up, I'll let things unfold, but I'm not going to take the view that I'm living in a scarce reality. So it's a little weird to talk about because it is a paradoxical thing that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And so a kind of, if I were to reframe your experience, if with as an example of willfulness, it would be something like, oh, I have this book. Now I'm just going to do these practices and this is going to cure things. But there, I'll do them and shit, it's not working. We've all had that experience too. And it's in the missing pieces that you're like, God, I'm still in charge here, but I got a book, I got some practices. No, it's like you're not in charge of that ultimately, but there is something for you to do in it. And that's the exploration. That's kind of the way I would reflect on your question.
Yeah, and I'm reflecting on it freshly because I'm never without some different circumstances that seem enervating and maybe difficult or troubling. Something. There may be 10 things that are just surging with beauty, and then one or two things you're like, God, fuck that.
One or two?
Well, okay, fine. I don't want to overwhelm us all at once. Let in all the things. But the confrontation, it's like my one of my dear friends and colleagues is a teacher of Tantra, Sri Vidya Tantra, and she says to her students, and we talk about it, that real inner work is a confrontation of your value system. What do you value? And how do you prioritize? What's the hierarchy of values? And these circumstances that seem to be like thwarting or difficult or unpleasant or downright shitty, when I'm able to use them to grow, they help me to see, wow, what am I prioritizing? What am I valuing? What am I energizing? And there's a choice. When I was in that period of in the car 15 hours a day to earn what I used to earn in one private session, I saw nobody except for the people getting in and out of my car, or if I had to go to the gas station or the grocery store. So I wasn't seeing my friends. I wasn't receiving hugs. I was getting up very early. I was going to bed, later, and just doing what I needed to do between my practices, a bit of yoga, and getting in the car and eating. And so I got to confront my story. Stories like, oh, am I lonely? Am I like, where am I resting my attention? What's that creating as an experience? And are there other choices? Are there other places to rest my attention that are not denying life, but like actually opening more widely to what's possible?
Yeah. No, it's beautiful what you're pointing to, Scott. You're pointing to kind of welcoming reality and experience, and using it as a field of practice and growth.
I bumped into a guy at the gym yesterday. Oh, sorry to cut you off.
No, I was just to add that in my own experience, like those difficulties in life I'll put it the other way. The deepest learning and the deepest growth and awakening that I've had have been rooted in my own suffering and my own challenges. They've been the greatest teachers I've had. And you can't say to another person, like, when they're suffering, like, oh, what a great teacher you have,
Yeah.
Because that's disrespectful to their experience. But I hear that in what you're saying. And, I'm not happy that you went through that period of your life, but I know that it bore tremendous fruit. And so what are you going to say?
Yeah. I feel like I'm going through a similar but very different period right now. I was reflecting on it this morning as I was just doing my ablutions and making tea and whatnot, and going, there's a way that somatically this feels like one of the most challenging, difficult periods of my life. And somebody outside would go, how is that possible? Like, you have money to eat, a roof over your head, you have these little gadgets like red light therapy and things in your house, and what is it? And I don't try and push back. I'm like, yeah, I do have all those things. And this is still one of the most difficult transition periods somatically, like how my body feels. there are chunks of the day where there's tension in the chest and belly. The difference is from 10 years ago, 20 years ago to today is like, I have the sense to pick it up and hold it rather than just be it and suffer.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm like, oh, this is uncomfortable. This is painful. This is a perspective. This maybe even has an age and a time to it in my life that's coming forward for integration. And let this also give me compassion for anybody who's confused and in some form of suffering. So I'm not trying to push it away. And I'm not, by saying all this, I don't want to make myself trying to look good at all. It's not about that, but just noticing the process of being with challenge and discomfort, and to kind of bring in something you started to touch on, that like we can have experiences of timeless, boundless awareness at anywhere in our development, accidentally or on purpose. But how we make meaning of what's arising is one of the biggest opportunities for us to grow individually and relationally, like what you're doing with the Generating Transformative Change cohorts, is like helping individuals and collectives and relationships to be able to access a wider view that's not about trying to force reality to change, but it's also not hiding out in some pseudo state of consciousness. And staying right there at the edge of awareness and discomfort.
Yeah, there's a couple of things I just heard in what you said that I wanted to highlight or respond to. One is like welcoming difficult experiences, that kind of relationship to challenges that you're describing, which is, to me, like getting back to what we were talking at the beginning of the call about emptiness and fullness, that ultimately awareness is both totally open and free, but also connected, feeling, passionate. So it's loving. So, and those two, in my experience, blossom together. Like there's a way in which when you become more grounded in your awakened awareness, Scott, you also can become more feeling, because you're just open to everything. And in some ways, like more difficult experiences can come up, pain, suffering, feeling of what's going on in the world. But as Ken Wilber said, there's can be more pain but less suffering.
Yeah,
It's actually not. But for those listening, it's not exactly the same experience of pain that you might think. It's actually just feeling, and kind of open compassion in the way that you said. Like from that awakening, every so-called difficult experience that you have personally is a doorway to compassion, because like there's people everywhere in the world right now having a very similar experience. There's probably millions of people who are having a pain in their chest and their belly right now.
And that seems to be at the root of a lot of the pain that I'm experiencing, is sensing that like my circumstances are not problematic on the whole at all. It's really this feeling so opened up and vulnerable and raw to so many things, so many beings.
Yeah. There's another thing in what you said that struck me, which is there's another teaching in the Tibetan tradition it's called about view and conduct. And I heard a little something in what you said that sparked that in me, which is there's a great figure in Tibetan Buddhism, Padmasambhava. It's said that he would say that your view should be as wide as the sky. your view is as wide as the sky, and your conduct is as fine as barley flour. And and what this pointing to is, like you said something about, like, you can get into an expanded state, and you don't want to just kind of hang out in that. And what he's pointing to is, like, your awakening is your view. That's what that's referring to. You can have this wide open, vast, expansive view, free, open. Developmentally, it can be like very complex and nuanced, grand view of the world. And he's saying, like, if you try to express that through your conduct, you can be arrogant, like, let me help you with my vast, expansive view.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you let's call it getting the conduct lost in the view, and that if you get the view lost in the conduct, that's like getting attached and lost in samsara. And you want the view to cultivate your freedom and your compassion in the world to be specific, contextual, earthbound, fine, just what's needed. So maybe you see the timeless, boundless, but you just give somebody a glass of water who's thirsty. This is kind of, as we evolve, we can also kind of get stuck with this, because we now see so much about the world, and see so much about the meta crisis, the difficulties that are going on in the world. We have a vast view into many things that are beyond our circle of influence, you could say. So we get lost in all of this stuff that's going on, this vast view of what's potential and what's happening, and then we forget to take the garbage out, or to care for our partner, or so that's a teaching that I found really helpful. Cultivate your view, and then be in the world, and intentionally, but in a way that makes a difference to you and the people around you, the people that you touch, your friends, your community, people you see in the store, just moment to moment, in the only humble ways that we can.
Cultivate your view, refine your conduct.
Yeah.
My conduct.
Yeah.
It brings so much stillness through my body just to be with what we're feeling it together.
Yeah.
And the stillness seems to be like right at the edge of form and formlessness.
Are you aware of something in particular that released?
Yeah.
Into that stillness?
Right through the center of my body, that what felt like a degree of a knot.
Yeah.
Has opened, kind of like a flower opens.
Yeah.
Like almost so gradually as to only be noticed in retrospect. Oh, the flower's open. Or more open. For me, this is just, it continues to point back at the importance and the value of engaging in coherent relationship. I mean, all relationship is a teaching, but to have a place to touch into, whether it's on the cushion, but for me, with others, that represences how profoundly cared for everything is, even when it looks like it's not. And to wait in that wait, to be receptive in that experiencing for intuitive guidance about anything practical or that needs to be done or ceased from being done. And that does come through crystal clear in that cultivation of receptivity and softening.
Mhm.
Hmm. What's your experience?
When you begin to speak to that, um, I was connecting with, in this conversation about view and conduct, I was connecting to um, the sort of aspect of our existence, which is um, both kind of vast and humble, like, and I just sort of relaxed a little bit more into that. And I think it's just something that I've reflected and worked with. This kind of, like, earlier you said, like, when we were joking, and you said, like, oh, like, I got 8 things that are good and sometimes 1 or 2 that are bad, and I said, just 1 or 2. And you said, well, I try not to overwhelm the system. It's like there's something that we're grappling with here, which is, sort of our vastness, and then what do you do with that? you know
Yeah,
Even at whatever level of practice or wherever you are in your life, there's always there's some imagination. Like, ultimately, if you sort of go down the bottom of your to-do list and keep going, it just leads to the transcendent creative impulse that just goes down forever. Like, if you solved everything in your life, you would start to solve things in the world. And when you solve that, you would solve things in other worlds. It just goes on forever. And then human beings are, like, we're humble. That's that fine as barley flour thing. you know yeah, you can see the meta crisis and the potential for a collective awakening, and then you get up and you do your practice, and you have some phone calls and send some emails, and then you go to bed.
yeah,
Like, it's a humble life, right? Like, like, you do what you can in the time that you have. And there's something to there's the teacher Samuel Bonder. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
yeah,
Have we ever talked about Samuel? Yeah,
a little
like, the
bit.
way he talks about the sort of divine and human um, confluence in us. There's something to reckon with. And so, in that moment when you were speaking, I was just kind of relaxing into that. Like, it's easy for the conduct to get lost into the view. To say, like, I have to do greatness. I have to, and then every day it's like, okay. Like, I play jazz music, and I have my guitars are sitting here next to me, and this is like a great practice field for this. Like, I have a vision of greatness, when it comes to being a musician, you know, and then I'm like, okay, I practice for a little bit today. That's good. That's all you can do.
Yeah,
And obviously there's parts of my life that I've really committed to, and I feel happy with, um, you know, what I've done and can do. And I really appreciate, just being able to be of service to people and to be in this field of love and compassion. And there is a way that you connect into the larger flow when you offer anything to anyone. And there's a way that you can tap into that view. But at the same time, it's humble.
sure is humbling at certain moments to see how it all works with or without my participation.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you seeing that. Yeah. Right. Anyone who's ever left a job and then gone back and talked to your colleagues later, you realize, like, oh, like, that had absolutely no impact by leaving this company. They're just doing absolutely fine with
Yeah,
me.
they're just slipped another cog into the machine that's doing its bit. Totally. There is a question I mentioned to you before we began that I ask every guest, and it stands in the field of a quote that I love from Suzuki Roshi, Shunryu Suzuki Roshi, who opened the Zen Center of San Francisco in the 60s. And he would say, "Death is certain, the time is not. What is the most important thing?"
Mm.
So I'll offer that to you. What is the most important thing?
Mm. Well, I think in a kind of universal sense and very particular to this time in history, the most important thing is connection, compassion, mutual care. We're in the best sense of the word, exercising our compassion both has us awaken and it also cares for others in the process. And it'll have you confront everything imaginable in yourself. And including, waking up to the view that it also doesn't matter, ultimately. It's so this is an important thing.
Yeah.
I never speak in absolutes that much, so I don't know what the most important, but that's an important thing, and it's also really important to our time right now. It's important to us as human beings. We're living in a time where where our social systems and our relationship to information and our politics is just causing us to spin out into degrees of separation that are kind of unprecedented. And it's just important, I think, for everybody to be reminded you're a human being. We're part of the same family. You're my brother. We're in this together. What can I do?
Mm. When you hear the title of this show, The Choice to Grow, what does it evoke for you sitting here at this moment?
I would say, when you come to a point where you realized that that's a choice, that's a real, like, it's a real blessing. That's the doorway to everything, really. That moment where choicefulness is a realization of freedom. Prior to having choice, there's no freedom. It's just a way that we talk about the freedom. And so there's a freedom in that, and also an intentionality to grow, and a realization that of that possibility that we can change, we can evolve, we can grow. It's certainly been my experience.
Hmm.
So if you feel like you have the choice to grow, then that's beautiful. Get on with it.
Quickly.
if you don't feel like you have the choice to grow, then that's also a really valid human experience, and we all experience that in parts of ourselves too. So to to not to be respectful and compassionate for those parts of us that don't feel free. And paradoxically, that's also growthful.
That
That's
might
what
end up
comes
being
up
the
for
title
me.
of the episode. Choicefulness is the realization of freedom. There's so
Mm,
much in that, so much available
mm,
in that. Like there's an awareness, at least for me at this moment, of incredible abundance, reflecting on that. Wow, wait, I have an awareness of choice. This is an abundant moment.
mm,
I have so many memories of not feeling like there was a choice and feeling
yeah,
stuck or forced or limited in some sort of a way without realizing it was just the view and where I was at in my view of life and sense of self that was
yeah,
the only block.
yeah. yeah, and like your practice of cultivating that, we often kind of focus on the part of our life where we don't feel like we're free. But I think what I hear in you now is just sort of stepping back and seeing this wider expanse of choicefulness, of freedom. And yeah, we can orient to that. Obviously, there's even in like, it's like Viktor Frankl, even in the worst circumstances, there are aspects of ourselves that are totally free to choose how we relate to the circumstance.
Hmm.
So you can, start with that where you are free.
Would you share a little bit more for the people who are listening that may be actually ready for or fit for something like GTC? Who is that for? What is it about? And
Hmm.
what does it tend to bring out of a person in their
Yeah.
full participation?
Yeah. Yeah. So there's that particular program, Generating Transformative Change. The GTC program is our kind of core offering that we also kind of offer shorter programs and do coaching and do other stuff. But that's kind of the heart of our work in many ways. It's the deepest form of our work, and it's a pretty significant commitment to your own growth and your own process. It involves a 9-month period with a small cohort group of people that you kind of get really deep and intimate with. And there's 4 residential retreats over that period, roughly week-long retreats. So it's a significant commitment of time and energy during a portion of your life. And often, people come to that process when they're like deeply engaged in their work, but feel that they're kind of at an edge. It could go deeper, or they're in a transformative process. They've kind of, you know, uh, left the shore of their old ways and haven't arrived at and don't see land on the horizon. you know, and that in that liminal space. So part of what that does is really hold people through that transformative process, or there's a feeling of needing to let go old ways of being, a, a a kind of intuition of some of the deeper ground of being that we're talking about, but not fully manifest in life. So it's often attracts people who are really kind of ready for transformative work or in the midst of it, and holds that in that container. And it's work grounded in this kind of what we call awakened wholeness, which is this already present view of the world as already whole and awake. And we do deep work across these different dimensions of our own unfolding during that process to cultivate qualities in relationship and collective life and in our own integration and our awakening and our development. And it's done intimately in a group of people. So part of what we're doing in this is we're really like listening deeply to each individual's unfolding. And so we're not kind of laying a trip on people like this is what the ideal is. We have certain views and frameworks that we're holding that contain your growth, but we're also like really paying attention to where people are right now and what's unfolding, what's next for you, and supporting that. And then one of the unique parts of the program is we also do that at the collective level. So we're actually working in the collective too and seeing what's the unfolding of the collective and teaching practices to cultivate awakening at the and kind of consciousness at the collective level, and practice at the collective level. So that's a little bit about the details of the program and maybe a little bit of who comes into it. Um, Many people, who take GTC kind of mark it as one of the most meaningful experiences of their life. Often people find a deeper relaxation into themselves, a deeper openness to whatever's arising. And that takes a practical form of being able to be in intensity and be in complexity and still stay connected and effective and contributing. And so it's also situated in our connection to what's of most importance to us, of being benefit in the world and this time. And so often people who come into the program don't just come in for personal reasons, but see themselves as part of this broader collective evolution and awakening, and want their lives to be an expression of that. So sometimes what's a person's journey is into a deeper or a new form of work in the world that's an expression of their deepest values. So there's a lot that people get out of it, and it's very particular to the person. You know, what you come in with, what your edge is, where you unfold.
I've known and do know so many graduates of that program, and even though I haven't personally participated in the program concretely, I would highly, highly recommend it to anybody who's feeling the calling to check it out. Where do people go to learn more about this?
You go to pacificintegral.com and you can just reach us there. You can get in touch with us. I'd be happy to, connect with anybody or connect with the community here. We also, I don't know when this will be published, but we also have we do periodic open workshops, and there's one on July 15th and 17th called The Power of the Disorienting Dilemma. So this is really about this thing I was just talking about being in the midst of change and not seeing a way forward. What do you do when the pathway is not clear? How can you cultivate capacities to be with that and be creative in that space?
I hope you're considering the possibility, with the level of interest, of turning that into a longer engagement for people. Like, that is
Yeah.
such a profound pointing out instruction in the title alone.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't think this will be published before then. I think we're already into later July with our publishing dates, but
we'll do that. We'll do that again. But yeah, no, it's kind of one of the arts of our work, which is essentially, being able to be deeply present in that kind of emergent, complex space where you don't know how to move forward, and how can you be in a place of trust and openness and creativity in that space? So that is kind of at the heart of GTC too. But yeah, maybe one point we'll make it into its own program.
Yeah. I'm imagining it almost this is my projection if I did it, like some sort of hybridized thing where there's an in-person kind of series of like ropes courses and collective endeavoring of doing the impossible, so-called impossible, but like including the concrete, getting that person over that log that's way up there and seems impossible as a group. Kind of thing.
Yeah.
Huh.
It brings back some good memories of doing a ropes course.
Same. Yeah. I remember being in our school was incredible. Our public school, where I grew up in Rochester, New York, Penfield High School. There was you had to apply, but my senior year, I was in this year-long leadership course. I think it was a whole year. It might have been just a semester, but butt ass cold in the middle of Rochester winter, we're out there as a group doing this ropes course together. And there were so many challenges that looked impossible from various points of view that some of us carried. Like, I was the guy, I talk about this in a different episode, who each time, and thank God they ended the presidential fitness test, but that was just like the worst thing in the whole effing world, was like knowing I had to go in this thing and not be able to do a pull-up and be watched doing nothing and failing.
I'm with you. I totally forgot about that, but yeah, that was.
But then doing this rope
course trauma informed.
Here were all the cool kids and the not cool kids, said me, working together, and it completely changed my sense of self. One of many times, but it completely changed my sense of self to come together with people that I didn't think I could be chosen by, and people that I wouldn't choose, and then some that were just cool and friends. And to see the transformation of that, where everybody gave up their thing in order to help the person or the group accomplish this task.
Mm.
Amazing.
Mm. Yeah, we had in one of the GTC cohorts, we had somebody who led high ropes courses, and he took the cohort out on it one day, and that was just very cool. Yeah. No, it must have been really powerful as a kid to do that.
I would do it again.
Yeah.
What would you like to imagine? Everything that you've ever said or written has been erased, gone, dissolved, and you're about to take your last breath, and you could leave a couple of key somethings in words for us, for the world. What might you leave?
Well, I don't know what I would actually leave, Scott, but what came to my mind was words of a teacher. And these were words of Dan Brown that he spoke to Dustin DePerna when he was dying.
Okay. I think I know where this is going. I'm already laughing.
It's not the one that you're thinking
Oh,
about.
okay.
That's a good one too. But this was he said he had given to Dustin all of the teachings, to empower him to carry on his work. And he said to him, make sure to tell them it doesn't take a long time. And I also think of another teacher of mine who in training I had as a somatic therapist. She had a real stand for that we can heal. Like that we're, sometimes it takes a long time. We, we're going to be doing our own work forever, right? And she said, no, it's not about that. It's about healing. You actually heal. And I saw that in both Dan and Ailey, their stand for realization. You can awaken, you can take this all the way to enlightenment. You can heal, and it's possible. It doesn't take a long time. Maybe this is the lifetime. So those words came to me. But maybe if it's my own dying moment, I might just say, this is all about love. Just love each other. That's another thing sometimes I say with the faculty team when we're going into a GTC retreat. We've had meetings going over all sorts of things that we're going to do and all the details and complexity and what's going on with each participant. And I just will say, like, don't forget, this is just about loving each other. That's all it's about. So I'll offer that too.
Thank you. Thank you for those incredibly simple and incredibly powerful and aspirational, and reminding us that it doesn't have to take a long time. The important things don't have to take a long time, and that there's support to learn how to not have to take a long time. Yeah.
Thank you, Scott. It's been great to have this conversation. Really appreciate it.
Likewise, it's a joy to be with you with all of my heart. And on behalf of all the listeners, thank you for everything you've lived and been through, including the difficult moments we'll know nothing about, where you chose to grow so you could be here today. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
So we're going to do what we usually do. We're going to end together, listeners and us, just being together in this alive field of stillness and silence together for about 10 seconds or so. And you might want to soften the soles of your feet like you're opening fists with your mind. Same with the palms of your hands, like we did in the beginning of the show. And just slow the breath and experience your experience. Loving the episode? Click to follow, like, and share it as widely as possible. Want to go deeper with the choice to grow? Explore the show notes. You'll find links there for going deeper with our guests, as well as how to work with me in the work of waking up, growing up, cleaning up, and showing up. Thanks for listening. Can't wait to join you in the next episode.